Hey everyone, my name is Chad Van Handel, Chief Lending Officer at Unison Credit Union. I'm excited to welcome you to our next episode of the U Talk Podcast, Real Estate Edition. We've got Logan Rankin here in the studio today. I think you're going to be super impressed by his story. But basically, just as a quick background, after spending some time as a strategic management at a Fortune 50 retailer, he decided to pivot in 2013 and start buying some real estate. Went from 0 units to 1,000 units in a short period of time. And again, he's going to tell you a little bit more about it. But with that, we'll welcome Logan Rankin to the studio.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here today.
So I think let's just start with, when did you get the real estate bug and how did that kind of come about?
Yeah. Well, the real estate bug started after I graduated from college. My wife and I started with negative $40,000 in debt. And all we've been taught up to that point after graduation and through school was that you shouldn't have debt. All debt's bad debt. When you earn money, you save the money. And then any money that you actually have left over, you should throw that into a 401k because that's the best place for your money. And that's what we did. So we had average to below average jobs. We're lucky to have jobs right away after college anyway, but we had a decent amount of income coming in and we aggressively paid down our debt. And as we started to save and as I started to put some more money into my 401k, I started to get really frustrated because I'm a guy that likes to understand. Like, I'm working really hard for my money, but I wanted to understand how hard my money was working for me. And I really had no clue what my 401k was going to produce. And I just felt like, we wanted to make sure that we had options in the future. And after talking to my wife a little bit, it was clear that I wanted to better understand why people were telling me to do throughout my whole life to do what we were doing. So I should probably read some books. And up to this point, like even throughout college, I was lucky enough to have a pretty good memory. I never really read very much, but I started reading. So I'm like, man, like if I read 10 pages a night, that's 300 pages in a month. I could read 12 personal finance books this year. And that's what I did. I started reading personal finance books to educate myself on my financial literacy. And as I started reading them, you read enough personal finance books, you start to learn that 90 to 95% of the most wealthiest people have their money invested into real estate. So that started getting me interested in real estate. And so now I started to educate myself on real estate as well. So I did, after graduating for about 3 years, it took me to really understand that I didn't understand where my money was being invested, if that makes sense. Yep. Then after reading and educating myself on real estate, we decided we had some money saved up. And I underwrote a deal. It was only a single family house because at this point I still didn't understand real estate, and going back in time I would have started a little bit bigger, but all we had enough money for at the time and all my mindset allowed me to do is buy that single family house. Sure. So we bought this single family house, and I remember this. I told my wife, I said, based on my understanding and underwriting of this deal, it should produce $3,400. So, I mean, not a ton, but a year goes by and it produced $3,300.
Oh, wow.
And that changed everything for me. Of course, not because of the $3,300, but for these two reasons. One, every other investment I had up that point did not give me any money. Right. So this investment gave me $3,300 now, which I thought was really cool. But the second thing, and the more important thing, if somebody asked me to go back in time a year and ask me how much money I'm going to make in my 401k in the course of a year, I had no clue. Sure. And I'd actually tell you most people don't. Right. And here I am, $100 within it. So then we did after that is I said, well, this is like, let's take this money, let's save up again, and let's buy let's buy more. So the next year we bought 2 units, we doubled. And then the year after that, we bought 4 units. So we doubled after that. Wow. So, we started doubling and putting our money, and I started to grasp over the course of 3 years, right? 3 years, 7 units, not a ton, but I started to really understand money better, and I started to really understand how real estate could be a great tool to be able to help us grow. And meanwhile,
so can we unpack? Let's just step back. Let's unpack that first property. Was it a fixer-upper? Did you find it on MLS? Was it a no money down? Did you put some money down? Was it the 20% or what?
No, yeah. This deal, I did everything wrong in this deal financing. And it's appropriate that I'm at a bank to do this. But what I mean by that, it was on the MLS. And I ended up financing this with, I believe, Wells Fargo. So I had to put 25% down, which, like, in respect, it was way too much. And this property was super solid. But I did buy it at a great price, and I bought it in a great location. Good. So those are the two things I did right. Was not a fixer-upper. In fact, I still haven't spent any money on the house. And a cool part about this house, I still own it. because it's going to be hard to sell it just because it was our first one. But at that time, rent was like $750 and now rent's $1,300. Nice. So you just think about the difference on that. But
how many tenants have you had over the course of the years?
8 years?
Yeah.
4.
Okay.
I think probably 4. So not too bad.
Nice.
We had a tenant in there for a long time. But yeah, and that's the cool part about real estate is there's just so many different ways you can operate a deal, finance a deal, rehab a deal. But that one, in my opinion, I didn't finance that great, and still stuck with a big prepayment if I want to move it. But anyway, yeah. And then, I'm still working at this time.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people that get into real estate, I always share this, is because the first thing they want to do when they start tasting some of that income that's coming in is quit their job.
Yeah, just get out.
Get out and put and not that and so for some people that works, but for me that's not what I want to do. Real estate is it's a high barrier to entry if you have to put money into it, and buying properties takes money. So I did the opposite. I doubled down. Instead of just reading financial literacy books and real estate books, I started reading a lot of leadership books, and I started being really successful in my job and promoting over and over again, every about year to 2 years. Good. And the things that were helping me promote, I realized were the same things that were helping me be successful in real estate. I love operational reporting and figuring out how do you make something more efficient and more effective. Right. I'm the kind of guy that loves looking at P&Ls. Like, how do you produce more profit? Well, you do the same thing with a rental property, right? And I was pretty good with leading people. So those are the same things that could apply to my real estate business. So, as I was starting to promote there, I would obviously make more money in my W-2 job. And then as I started to accumulate more rentals, we didn't need the money. We stayed in the house that we had. We stayed with the vehicles that we had. And literally every single time I had enough, we would go broke. And what I mean is we'd save up enough money and we'd literally take everything. We wouldn't spend it on a vacation or on clothes or anything. We literally put it all back into the next investment property. Now, obviously we had reserves and those kind of things, and that really helped me scale. So I went from 7 units to 17, from 17 to 57 to 180, and right around 180, I'm at this time still working 60 to 70 hours, nights and weekends at my W-2 job, making a good amount of money now. But my real estate, I was only working 10 to 20 hours. I had a third-party management company. I'm like, this actually makes no sense. And at 180 units, it's producing a significant, amount of triple-digit income coming in. So I'm 30 at the time, and I'm financially free. Mm-hmm. And I tell my wife, I'm like, this makes no sense. So I quit my job. And I liked that job, but it was easy decision.
Sure.
So I quit it, and then since then, I took my property management in-house. So I have a property management company because I like control. That's why I like real estate. So I got an amazing guy that runs it for me, and they do a really, really good job operating my properties, and we also operate my employees' properties as well.
Great. Well, that's one thing. I mean, you talked a lot there. So scaling up to 180 units in that short period of time, you got to have the operational control, I have to believe, because you get all these properties and you just start adding and you're scraping the dollars together and buying them. And if you don't have those processes in place, I mean, what was that like? And so you said you're pouring over the numbers, you're looking at them pretty consistently, or what's that, or how did you get that scaled up so quickly?
Yeah, so I mean, once I started getting 10, 20, 30 units, you start realizing you got to be super organized. So I was just really organized in my underwriting. So I would keep track, obviously, of how much is a property supposed to produce. Just like my first property was supposed to produce $3,400, and like I said, it only produced 33.
Yep.
Now it's close, but most real estate investors just roll on to the next deal, right? I wanted to figure out why I was $100 off, and then I apply that learning to and a lot of times it's a controllable $100, and I apply that to the next property. So I would say I not only just started building up the systems and operations to scale, I started building up the network too. Yeah. Like, as you know, from a banking standpoint, you got to build those relationships. Yeah. And quite honestly, I think there's a lot of real estate investors these days that want to be at 100 units before they have one. Yeah. And that's cool, but it's hard to get a bank to be able to trust you, especially if you're not organized. For me, I had 2 relationships with just 2 banks, and it took me 3 years to buy 7 units. Right. So it's a lot easier to bounce from 7 to 17, do 10 in a year, because I was building a relationship, not just a system with the banks, and I just don't think a lot of people do that now. And that allowed me to do some more creative financing. So as they started to trust me, and I started to do deals that, maybe needed more rehab. I said I went from 17 to 57. Well, that year I bought a 50-unit portfolio. That needed about $500,000 worth of rehab.
Sure.
So and I was able to convince the bank to finance that whole thing for me, the whole purchase price plus some of the construction.
Okay.
And
are you a guy that can swing? Are you swinging a hammer? Are you somebody that wants to get in there and get down and dirty with the rehab?
Well, if you ask anyone in my company, they would tell you that I don't even know how to fix a toilet. So my wife would certainly tell you that too. So no, I'm not. I have found in real estate, or just in life in general, it's really important to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then being okay with not being good at those things. And I can swing a hammer, but probably not well. And I don't even know how to fix a toilet, but yet I own 1,000 units. So what I do try to do is I focus on two things. One, I'm going to do what I'm really good at, which is, coming up with a vision and a strategy to reposition these properties and ensure they're operating really, really well. And then I know the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the people around me that are really good at the things I'm not. Sure. So my companies are filled with people that are better than me in a lot of different aspects. And I love that because I think that has really helped me scale as well. I think there's a lot of people that want to put people around them that are similar to the individual. But that has certainly helped me scale too.
Yep. So are you a person that says I should build up on you're obviously not a person that says I should build up on my weakness, I should more play to my strengths?
Yeah, all day. And that's the thing. My job, they want, I was told by a lot of leaders that I need to focus on my opportunity. And I did. And I think you should, but I don't believe you should focus on your opportunity.
Right? Yeah, to a point, right?
Well, and maybe not at all. I think you should be aware of it.
Sure.
So be aware of it. But I think you should focus on your strength. Like, focus on the things that no one can touch you at. Yep. Like, that's exciting. Like, there are certain things that I feel nobody can be better at than me. And if I focus on them, I can be even better at those things. Yep. But I think too many people focus on something just maybe not naturally good at. Be aware of it, right? But then this is what I love about life that I didn't like in school. Like, I kind of feel like I get to cheat in real life, right? In school, if you don't know the answer to something, and you can't really look at somebody else's paper. But in life, you can absolutely hire the person that is better at you. And I almost feel like you can do that. You can mitigate some of that weakness. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's even go back to the beginning. So you're reading these books and you're interested in real estate. You think you need some of this cash, maybe a little bit to get it started. Was there any paralysis analysis as you went through that process, or were you? Once you had the money, you kind of move forward, or what was that? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I don't know if I recommend this, but I always like to be transparent. When my wife and I bought our first property, we bought that and had like $3 left in our savings account. So when, I'm a guy that believes that you need to educate yourself, certainly, but there comes a point where you got to take action. And one thing was for sure is I felt like I had no idea how hard my money was working for me in my 401k. And I wanted to try something. And I said, and then I like a risk mitigation. People see how fast I've grown and I'm sitting at 1,000 units, but 1,000 units never was my goal. And you don't know just because somebody grows fast, like, what their risk mitigation. Right. I still consider myself a conservative investor. My LTV's at a 66%. I have a DSCR of a 200%. Right, you're only looking for 130. Nice. So there's ways to scale in real estate conservatively too, and you don't need to over leverage yourself. But you do need to figure out how to take action and then how to learn from taking action. And that's what we did. Now again, I don't know if it's a great idea to put all of your money and have $3 left in your savings. I actually think we use a little bit of a credit card to even be able to do it. But in the future, and how I buy now is you got to, I make sure there's reserves. If there's capital improvements to the property, that they're set aside for that. But at the time, I know I needed to get started. And that's one of the hardest things in real estate is if you don't have the education, it's hard to get started. But also, you got to have the money to get started. Right. So.
Yeah, and there's resources and books and all this stuff that you can continue to pour over, but until you make that step and you go forward, you're not going to get that hands-on experience that's really going to help take you to those next levels. So what about, were these in the area that you were living, or how far from a geographic standpoint were you looking, or what was your radius?
So again, because one of the biggest reasons I wanted to get into real estate is I not only wanted to understand where my money was going, but I wanted to have more control over it. You want to know what you don't have control over is a 401k. So I keep harping on that because it just drives me crazy that you can't access that until you're 59 and a half old, right? You give somebody your money, it's your money, but you can't get it back. That's no control. You don't have control. Yep. So I wanted control. So to answer your question, it was close. Like literally, I could walk to my first investment property. Nice. And I managed all the way up to 7 units. And then I'm like, okay. I should probably, there's a lot I don't know. And which, by the way, so I've managed my properties myself. I've hired a third-party management company to manage them as I was scaling. And now I obviously have my own property management company. So I've kind of done everything you can do and how you operate a property. And I would tell you there's not one way that is better than the other. Because in the beginning, it was I learned a lot by running the properties myself. When I hired a third property management company, they did a good job. Like, I was really happy with learning how they were operating my properties, and I didn't have the time to manage them myself, right? And you got to have scale to be able to build your own management company. I see this all the time. People are starting their own management company. They have like 25 units. You might as well, like, how do you afford? Like, so it took me to hit that 180, 200 unit mark to be able to have enough money to hire a good staff.
Right.
So
what about as you were getting these contractors, how long did it take you to build up a good database of contractors that you could rely on to do some of the things that you needed done?
Yeah. I think it just happened naturally as we started scaling. So my management company, we started at, 4 people. I think we're closing in on about, in-house, probably 30, 40.
Great.
And I mean, that's just a ton to be able to, as I grow, the company grows. So it's like the companies are feeding each other. But we haven't had too much time finding good people. And I would consider not just a management company, but also like a repositioning company. I have a deal under contract right now that I'm going to spend $400,000 worth of rehab in 9 months.
Sure.
And of the $400,000, we probably can do $350 of it in house.
Oh, great.
So to be able to do that while running 1,000 units or whatever we're at now, it's not the easiest thing to do. But again, if you build up systems, we have a really we do hire out, or we do have 1099 contractors or licensed plumbers, but we also have people on staff that can do those type of things too. And as you scale, you can start to do that. So.
Did you ever have any situations? I know that the big thing is, well, I got to fix a toilet at midnight, or on a holiday, I got to, I'm going to get a tenant call, and what am I going to do? I have to run out there, my nice suit and tie and fix something.
Well, I'll never forget my first call. So I only have 1 unit, right? 3 months went by, I didn't even get a call. I got lucky, and I get this call that said like the washer is flooded. There's water everywhere, and it doesn't work. And again, I don't really even know how to fix a toilet. So I panicked. I tell the tenant, let me get back to you. And I turn to my wife, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And she said the best thing, and I learned a lot from this, just Google somebody that does know how to take, and that's what we did. I had somebody there within an hour. They changed out the water. So I learned a lot just from that. I'm like, man, real estate, when you really break it down, there's not a lot of complicated things. And maybe I wasn't smart enough to understand what Warren Buffett does with the intrinsic value of a company. I tried to read those annual reports and get into stocks, but 2 things always held me back. I never felt like I could grasp the true understanding of if that company was going to do good or not, right? I vested in Tesla, for example. And I'm still in Tesla. Yeah, it's done really well. But here's the deal. That's, for me, I have, 5% of my portfolio is less than 5, maybe 2% of stocks. And to me, that's gambling. So I gamble a little bit. All right, that's what I'm doing. Because if Elon Musk says something on a tweet that could literally move my stock down hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right. That's not. Right. Don't tell me that's investing. And then the other thing that sucks about stocks is, and a lot of investment vehicles, is I hate the fact that to get the income. I've done really well in Tesla, but how much money did I actually make? Right. Well, I haven't sold the stock.
Exactly.
So that's what I love about real estate. You don't have to sell the real estate to get the money, right? You're getting cash flow every single month if you buy well. Whereas in a stock, you sell the stock, then you got to pay taxes on that stock, and then you get the money. But now it's gone, right? Now you don't have that investment anymore. So I love that you get to keep the investment too. That's so.
So that's good. But again, the key points there is, even if you can't, you're not going to get these calls all the time. And if you set up the systems eventually, and you get these contractors and you get your database set together, make a call and somebody gets in and fixes the property, and away you go. So
let me. I didn't finish that thought. So I love this question because when I think there's so many people that are afraid to get in real estate. They say real estate is risky, and I think it comes down to the nights and weekends. So first of all, so I would tell you, I'll share this with a lot of people. If you manage right, if you have the right systems, if you can show empathy, if you can actually be we're focused on improving people's lives. If you can be a great landlord, tenants don't want to call you at night. Right. They're doing stuff. Like, they don't want to call you on the weekend. They're doing things. Like, when we were at about 500 units, we would maybe get one call the entire week after 5 o'clock. Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, it usually happen during the day, and especially if you're doing a lot of the right things. And then, yeah, to your point, like, it doesn't happen as often. Have I had a drug bust? Of course. Like, have I had a unit ruined? Absolutely. Like, but here's the deal. You fix it. Yep. Like, you know, and more times than not, a rental property is going to have less bad things that happen than good things. Yep. And most of those bad things that happen are very controllable too. So.
That could take me so many different ways. Maybe so the other thing you touched on, you treat your tenants, you know, as an equal. I mean, basically you treat them as a partner. And so I've seen some situations where people do treat them like I'm the landlord and I'm going to kind of be an authority figure. But then there's other situations where, again, if you treat them as a person and you're on the same level, I think that's another way that can work out pretty well for you and probably better than trying to be somebody that's just trying to come in and collect the rent and things like that.
Yeah, I rented too. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I actually think there's a lot of people that should rent instead of own. Yep. You know, even investors, like, instead of spending your time paying for a house and all the expenses that come along with the house, sometimes if you want to scale, renting might be the best thing for you. But so I remember renting, and I think you got to just, not that you don't hold them accountable to the rules, but there's, you know, you can hold them accountable and give them respect at the same time. And I think that's really important. And I think it's important to invest in your property so that they're, we call it, you want to be proud of the place that you live in, right? And, you know, one of my golden rules for when I buy a property is that 12 months after I own it, I would be proud to move my grandma into it. If I'm not proud enough to move my grandma into, then I probably don't want to own the property. Yeah. So, yeah, I think those are really important. And I'll be honest with you, most of the properties, a lot of the good deals that I get are unfortunately from landlords or management companies that do just the opposite. Sure. You know, try to pull every single dollar out of the property. Yep. You know, the property is falling apart. The tenants hate them. Yep. Why would the tenant even want to pay? Yep. I mean, we can get into the whole COVID discussion this year and how that gets into it. But what I would just tell you is it doesn't really matter what happens. If you treat your tenants with respect and you want what they want, it's a lot easier from a management standpoint too.
Yep. So, no, that's great. What about the legal side? Was that something that concerned you at all? I mean, did you feel like you needed to have these contracts that were, you know, buttoned up and T's crossed and I's dotted, or how did that process get started for you as you jumped in?
Yeah, quite honestly, yeah, our contracts are really strong, and I do have a great attorney that has helped out. But like legality-wise, again, it probably goes back to what we've been talking about. If I think if you, for the most part, if you do the right things, like and you are good to the tenants will be good back to you too. So I've had very, very little, or my companies have had very, very little like legal issues because we just follow the rules. Sure. We follow the laws and we expect the tenants to follow the laws. So our leases are solid, and anything else that we do, we make sure that if we're unsure that we get sound legal advice, of course. But when I managed myself, like I literally Googled a lease sheet, right? There's only so much that can happen. Right. So I think my lease sheet was like 1.5, 2 pages, and I think it's now, you know, more. Yep. But there's not as many bad things that can happen if you do the right things in real estate. Sure.
What about from a liability standpoint? Did you buy that first one as an LLC? Did you buy it in your personal name, or what? What advice do you have for people on that?
Yeah, so I bought that in my name, and my advice is I wouldn't. So the reason I did is at that time, my financial education only allowed me to see what was the lowest interest rate at the time, which I could get the lowest interest rate if I put it into our name. Now, if you're talking about liability, I think that it's worth paying maybe a little bit more to do a commercial loan or to put it into your LLC, right? It just protects you in case anything would happen. So I do everything in LLC now, and I do recommend that from the start, even if you can get a little bit better of a rate, unless you're going to live in it. Yep. And you lower the liability that way too. That's a great way to start. I mean, I got a guy in my team, an intern that's going to be 18, and the best way this guy can get started is by, doing one of those loans where he lives in it, he puts 3.5% down, and he learns the ropes. So there's a room for that too.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a rise in the house hacking and things like that as people look to evaluate what's the best way for me to get into a home if they're moving from renting.
Yeah, I think house hacking is if I could go back in time, that would be an awesome way to be able to do it. It's tough with kids now, but man, if you are young and you want to get into real estate, and you don't have a lot of capital, that's a great way to get into it.
Did you do any flipping of houses initially? Was that ever part of the plan, or what happened there?
I did. I flipped probably a half a dozen houses. I had a partnership, so somebody that helped with managing the contractors while I helped with the financing. In fact, I flipped a 30,000 square foot school. So just like some really cool projects. But here's what I learned. Just like a stock, like flipping, you can make a lot of money, but it's so short term. And you flip the home, you sell the home, you grab the profit, right? Sometimes you pay taxes on that profit. You should. But what the difference is when you invest into investment properties is it pays you every single month, and you get to keep the asset. Right. When you flip a home, and flipping to sell, obviously, like the asset is gone. So you make a one-time chunk of payments. And my goal was never 1,000 units. It was, remember from the beginning, it was like, how do I become financially free and make my money working hard for me every single month? I learned that the richest people have a ton of streams of income. Yeah. So flipping a house and selling it is not a stream of income, right? It is just like, unless you can automate it or systemize it or do whatever, and that's a lot of work. So, I mean, there's certainly people that can do that. But for me, if you do flip homes, that's great, but take the money and then put it into an investment property. That investment property is going to pay you monthly returns forever. You want to get a chunk out of that, run that property really, really well, and then refi it, which it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of these days.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, basically, if somebody's got some equity, I mean, values have been moving up, and if somebody's been in a property for a while, they've got some things they want to fix and get some cash out. It's definitely been something that people have been taking advantage of.
Awesome.
What about you're 30 and you're thinking about quitting your W-2 job and you're financially free. Was there any point that you're like, well, why do we buy any more properties? Why don't we just keep what we got and just maintain and go from there?
I get this question a lot for the same reason. They're like, well, look, why don't you pay off your house? Yeah. My house isn't, I refied just my house.
Nice.
So the reason why is because I believe that money should continue to move and money should be productive. So if I pay off my house, my money is just sitting in equity, right? And if I do, and now, at that point when I was 30 with 180, 200, units, I have a lot of streams of income and a lot of money coming in. So that I don't need. Like, I don't need all this cash flow. So what do I do with it? I could just leave it in the bank and let inflation eat away with it, or let a bank or a credit union like you guys take my deposits and then loan it out and make money off of my money. So I just put it to work. So again, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, it doesn't matter. Units are not my goal. My goal is how do I keep my money working as hard as I can? So that's why I continue to buy units, is because I don't want my money to sit. I want money to work hard. And my wife and I don't have huge aspirations of like what to do with it, right? Like, we built our dream home. Great. We're going to take a lot of vacations. We do take a lot of vacations, but we've decided to only give 5% of our wealth to our kids. So we're actually in the middle of building a foundation where we're going to give 95% of our money back. And so I'm super excited about that. I'm working on financial literacy for kids, curriculum for kids. Like I told you in the beginning of the story, like I unfortunately did not understand money all the way through school, all the way through college. It just took me way too long. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that went through our educational system or just in life and were not taught like about money. And like inflation is real. It's an invisible tax that people are not even aware of. So even if they don't take my advice, I just want to make people more aware of like what is happening to their money when they let it sit and why they should move it. And so we're really, really focused on taking our money and be able to do things like that now and help hopefully train some of the curriculum and maybe build out some books to help people from that capacity. But one thing's for sure, I want to keep my money working hard so that it makes more money so that I could do cool things for society and that I can be proud of.
All right, so you talked about mentors. How important have mentors been to you as you've built your business and taken it to the next level?
That's I know you didn't ask it this way, but it's probably one of the biggest mistakes I made in my real estate career. Mentors I'll answer the question, have been huge. And I don't even know if I look at them as mentors, but I see other people that are doing a really, really good job. And I try to take the time to learn from them and talk to them. And I certainly have a few now. But why I say it's my biggest mistake is because when I first started, nobody in my family was in real estate, right? I didn't know anybody else in real estate, especially real estate investments like I was trying to get into. And all I had was my books. So I self-educated, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but I could have probably cut my learning curve in half if I would have either paid for a mentor or got a mentor or, took a little bit more time to network. But I think for a lot of people, I kind of thought, well, man, I'm working 50, 60 hours a week at my W-2 job. I don't have the time for it. Well, that was just, if I would have taken the time, of course I had the time. Everybody has the same amount of time. If I made time for it, if I hired a mentor, I went to a workshop or I went to something, I think I would have been able to, I'm at 1,000 now, but I've probably been at 1,500, 2,000 units. So I think that's something for everybody is definitely take the time to self-educate, but try to surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of good resources out there. I'm sure you're finding that the people in the real estate community as well are pretty open to answering questions and talk about some of their past experiences as well. What about, because we're kind of hopefully nearing the end of COVID and things like that, how did your business come into the COVID situation and how's it been going through the last 18 months or so?
So COVID really hasn't been easy on any businesses really. And but here's the deal in business in general. It's one of the reasons I've always been pretty competitive, and it's one of the reasons I love business. I kind of treat it like a sport. And what I know in business or even in sports is that when things don't go right, there's certain businesses or people that can rise above that and focus on controlling what they can control, right? Your attitude is your altitude. And during COVID, we focused on what we can control. It was hard, right? Like I worked longer hours in some of my companies. Yeah. My team worked longer. You had to do different things. Like it's not, nobody, loves to wear masks and we wanted to make sure we certainly protected our tenants and did all those right things. But honestly, this was like one of the best years we've ever had. We did the right things. All my companies grew a lot. I was able to acquire more properties than ever because I think there was a lot of real estate investors that were either scared or hired a bad property management company that wasn't empathetic or held the tenants accountable and had higher delinquency, which means they couldn't hold on to the property. So, there's a lot of good deals out there. And so we're able to grow from COVID, but also just put some really good systems and operational procedures in place to allow us to grow too. So,
how has the relationship been with the tenants? Were you concerned that people were going to be going through job changes and things like that? Have you had good communication with them?
Yeah, I think here's the deal. I think I don't think it's been easy, for all residents and stuff like that. But I do think, and we certainly have given out a fair share of stimulus money this year. But there's a lot of resources, not just our company, but a lot of resources out there that I think really stepped up to help some of the residents. But then I think in general, a lot of residents are resourceful, and it's one of the reasons I love investing in real estate, right? You might be able to cut other things like a big screen TV or going to the theater out. But like what you shouldn't cut is like food and shelter. Right. So we didn't have a big problem with delinquency or vacancy. In fact, we ran a 1.5% combined throughout the entire of the year. That's so great. But I know in some areas of the United States it was worse than that. But I think we focused on what we can control. We helped out the tenants when we can, work with them, and try not to be so black and white, but still hold them accountable to what mattered. Because at the end of the day, one thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily see is like if tenants don't pay, like the landlord still has to pay, right? For them to be able to live there. Like exactly. Someone's got to keep the lights on, someone's got to pay the mortgage. So which I will touch on this. I also think there was a lot of real estate investors like me that did a good job that, didn't have too much issue navigating COVID thus far. But I do think, they asked for their banks to do different things. Yep. They asked for their banks to do, not pay their mortgage for a few months or go interest only, or they asked their banks like, hey, can you give me a 3-month break because of all this that's going on before anything was even going on. Right. And I'm all about protecting your downside, but I chose to do just the opposite with all my financial partners. I called them and said, I'm good.
Yep.
You're going to get your mortgage payment no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have reserves saved up. I have capital improvement funds saved up. And it is my job. You were nice enough to give me a lot of money to buy this apartment. And I signed an agreement to pay you every single month. And you're going to continue to get it. And then what I did is I sent them monthly updates without them asking. I'm just going to tell you how delinquency and vacancy is this month, because I know you're a little nervous. Because so the reason I did just the opposite is because, first of all, I feel obligated to fulfill my obligation when somebody gives me money, right? Especially, and my best partner is my banks. Yep. And then number two is if they did give me banks and something happened out of both of our control, it's still my job to operate that property. Right. And I wanted to make sure that I shared knowledge of how we're operating these properties, because guess what's going to happen when we do, or if we do ever have a downturn? Those banks are going to feel pretty secure with their debt with me, and maybe I'll be able to advance the rate or how much they're borrowing. And but it was important to me to make sure that they felt that their investment in me and the properties was safe.
Well, now it's time to get out your crystal ball and start to what does 5 years look like? What is this market going to do? Really, what does the next 12 months look like for real estate? And is this a good time for somebody to jump in if they're considering it?
So I think everything's speculation, obviously, but if you're just asking for my opinion, first of all, I'll answer your last question. It's always a good time to get into real estate. So I don't care how hot the market is. If you know your numbers, if you know your underwriting, you can buy a great deal. And I personally believe, do not let your money sit. I know a lot of people that have money just sitting and they're just waiting for a downturn. I know people that have been having their money sit for 3 years thinking there was going to be a downturn. And unfortunately, they're losing a lot of money letting their money sit, and there's a lot of opportunities that are passing them by. So I think you should get involved as right now at any market cycle. But my opinion on what's going to happen, I think we're going to have another strong year in real estate. Demand is really, really high, and there's not a lot of properties on the market. When there is properties on the market, they're going really, really quickly. I think we're going to have a strong market there's just so much money out there right now. I mean, there's a lot of money out there. I think it's going to be a lot of inflation. And for the next 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to have a pretty strong market. Right. 3 years from now, my gut tells me that we're going to have a slight pullback. And everything I hear from the books and some of the economic podcasts I listen to, that 2030s, inflation is really going to catch up to us and hurt us. So
yeah, definitely. Like you said, we can't continue to give out all this money, and it's going to eventually sometime catch up with us, I think, is what it seems like.
It has to. Right. Like, that's what people don't understand. And what's really, what people really don't understand is that we're putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. So we're giving all the stimulus money, by the way, to some people and a lot of people that don't even need it. Like, we should give it to the people that are unemployed, that aren't financially well off, that need it, right? We're creating an inflation problem. So these people that don't have assets, what happens with inflation? It's going to be harder and harder for anybody to be able to buy a house. And I think it's going to have a lot of effects on people down the road. I mean, I think 2%, 3%, 4%, even 5% is realistic here in the future for inflation.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the accounting and the numbers piece. Going back to that, how did your work with your accountant evolve over the years? Have you had to upgrade, or have you been able to work with the same person over the years?
Yeah. My accountant has been fantastic, and I have worked with him over the years. I also use like a cost segregation guy and try to surround myself with as many good people when it comes to accounting as possible. And I've felt in if you want to scale in real estate like I have, you have to be super detailed with the numbers and organized. Like, if you don't know where you are, it's not going to be possible to get to where you want to get. Right. So I have a lot of reports that are generated and details with the numbers that are generated. In fact, a lot of them just got done. But I want to know, like, my lifetime cash on cash return is 33.98. Not 34, but 33.9. Like, I want to know that my ROI has been a 42.5%. Like, those numbers are really important to understand. And now, Do I buy every deal like that? Of course not, right? You can't just look at cash on cash. You got to look at all the variables in a deal. But when it comes to accounting and bookkeeping and numbers, those are your lifeblood. Yeah. I love numbers because they can't lie,
right?
Right? Like
right.
Those are facts, and they tell a story. And they tell a story if you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. So I think I love that back end of the business. I know a lot of real estate investors that just aren't organized.
Right.
And that'll prevent you from scaling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing more refreshing than somebody to come in as a loan officer and put down a good spreadsheet that, again, analyzes the properties, goes into all the minutia of that. And again, if it's not your strength, then find somebody that can do that, and that's a little bit better than you, but you do need to understand it at some level.
Yeah, and banks love me for that reason too. And this is what investors should do. Talk to your loan officer about how they underwrite a deal. It's like crazy to me that people are like, well, there's so many different ways to underwrite a deal. Like, but why do you underwrite a deal? You underwrite it for two reasons, right? Most people underwrite a deal to see how much money they can make. You guys are underwriting the deal to see how much, the risk, right? So I love a lot of my banks, and the people I talk to are either co-founders of the banks, CEOs of the banks, and I've learned a lot from them. Man, you guys underwrite for so much risk. And as an investor, do you really want to lose your investment property? So if you're unsure how to underwrite a deal, ask a loan officer. Exactly. By the way, they'll be so happy to teach you, because they'll be like, yeah, I'm looking for the DSCR of 125%, and this is why, right? And but I do think that's a big thing. You got to assess your risk.
I agree. Any other tips in working with your financing sources or getting started? For people that are getting started in real estate.
Yeah. I'll share a couple. So I think one is a lot of real estate investors wait for the bank every single year to ask them for information. Banks don't ask me for information. I provide it. Yep. So you should be super transparent about where you are. In fact, you should be proud of it. If you're not proud of it, would you rather tell the bank how crappy you've been running the property, but this is why it was run crappy, and this is your new plan to not run crap? Right. I mean, get in front of it. Don't let the bank ask you why the property's not running well. So one of my biggest advice is you should have, what do you think would be really helpful for the bank? And provide it to the bank. I strategically sit down with every lender that I do business with in Q1 of every single year. Nice. And I bring my net worth. I bring my every LLC that's split up. I bring here's how well I've done. I bring every property breakdown. I bring more stuff that they don't even look at. But I want to just show them here's why you should continue to do business with me. In fact, this is why you probably want to give me more money. Right. And then I try to sit down with, and here's my second tip. Try to sit down with one or two new banks or lenders every single year, because every bank, you and I were just talking about this, every bank has a niche, right? I have some banks that are I've built such a good relationship, they'll help me finance a deal with little to no money down. Right. They might even give me money for construction. But there's downsides too. They're also going to come with a higher rate because they're a small bank. Yep. So they might be creative on the financing, but they got to charge a higher interest rate because they don't have as many deposits. So understand there's a bank for everything. Whereas I use bigger banks for deals that are just home runs. You're not going to have to reposition it. I might have to put 20% of my own money in, but my rate is 3%. Right. So that's really, really strong. So there's give and take. And I think there's a lot of investors with this tip that might have one lender and they do everything through that lender. Never put all your eggs in one basket. Right. And I think lenders will understand that as long as you're honest. Right. Here's the deal. I'm letting 3 other people know about this deal, including yourself. And I just want you to know I'm a business guy. I got to take the best deal. Right. And then once you give them their verbal commitment, you move with it.
Yeah, I love the tip about, again, knowing your numbers, making sure you've got your numbers pulled together and you're the one that's being proactive. I think that's great advice for anybody to take on as they scale their business.
Well, even you, when I hear a lot of new, because I have a coaching business, so I hear a lot of new investors be like, it's approved, but they got to go to the loan committee. I don't know exactly what that means, but wait a second, just stop a second. If you don't know what that means, then ask. Right. and if you're nervous whether it's going to get approved in the committee or not, I'm never I was one of those people that are like, so what are you guys talking about? And I remember my first loan officers. So we talk about the deal. We talk about the numbers. We talk about the way that you want to finance it. And the last thing we talk about is you. And that stuck with me. I'm like, wait a second, what do you mean me? Well, obviously, especially if it's personally guaranteed, right. If it's non-recourse, I mean, if it is recourse, not non-recourse, well, they're obviously betting on not just the deal itself, but they're betting on you too.
Exactly.
Which is why I like every single first quarter of every single year to sit down with these people and like present like myself as well as my financials, because I think that's key.
Yep. Nope, I agree. Got just a couple other things. You know, as you built your business, and I know you're pretty active on some of the social media. How big is branding to a new real estate investor, and how can they kind of get started in building their brand and building up kind of their persona?
Yeah. Well, here's what I don't think it's important at all.
Okay.
So you might have been thinking of that was going to be my answer. So I think there's too many people that have like 12 units that stand next to a Lamborghini and act like they know everything about real estate, right? And their net worth's like $50K. So like, I've been doing a lot more with social media lately, but not to build my personal brand. It's about to build what I'm trying to do, which is I want people to follow me on Instagram, and I want people to follow me on Facebook and on LinkedIn, because I'm trying to grow a following so that I can change financial literacy. And unfortunately, our financial literacy is just covered with so much red tape and politics and government. And I had one of my mentors, tell me that, Logan, you have like 500 followers and you have like 1,000 units. I know guys with 12 units that have 100,000 followers, and it's because I haven't been focused on building my brand. I've been focused on running the hell out of my properties. I've been focused on scaling. I've been focused on putting my money to work, and I still am. By the way, I have a brand guy that helps me with a lot of my social media, but I do think there's a time and a place, but it's got to be like your why. My why is not like, look at me and look what I've done. That's the last thing that's important to me. I have a bigger purpose here. I think a lot of people can get into real estate. I think a lot of people can be financially free sooner than they think. I think a lot of people can better understand that real estate can be an awesome way to reach financial freedom or to create streams of income. And one of my biggest goals with social media is this year it's two. It's one, to give out $1 million worth of free information.
Nice.
So I'm trying to post as much information to help people for free as possible. And then the second is to be able to put some sort of books or curriculum together through my foundation to be able and have enough followers that want to grab these books and teach their kids. And I really want to go after the kids or the young adult markets and just make them more aware of what they can do with their money.
Right, yeah, I mean, like you said, if people aren't getting introduced to this, they got to find it somehow. And again, if you can be that outlet where people can find it and be that source, that's fantastic. What about, I know you've got a great list on your website of a bunch of books and things like that. Is there a couple that you want to just kind of call out and say, start here or look here, or is there just too many that?
Yeah, I can name a couple. At this point, I read a book a week now, and it's either on personal finance, real estate, or leadership. I'm fascinated with the three subjects, and probably the Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my mindset, but everybody's read that. Yep. And if you haven't, you should. But I really like the book that not a lot of people read. It's by Ray Dalio, Principles, Life and Work. Yep. God, that book is so heavy. You got to read like 3 pages over and over again. But that book is phenomenal. Yeah. And then I really like How to Win Friends and Influence Others.
Yeah. Oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, exactly.
Dale Carnegie.
That's exactly right. This world's full of instant gratification and people that can't remember names. And I think if we practice a little bit more delayed gratification, and that book's all about like some really cool concepts that I think we've lost.
Yeah, that's great. As we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to kind of tell folks about kind of real estate or anything else you want to kind of impart on people?
No, nothing in particular. Hopefully people got some value out of today. And if you want to follow me, I have Logan J. Rankin is my Instagram handle. I'm on Facebook, Rankin Investment Group. I'm on LinkedIn. You can just look me up. You can put it in the show notes or whatever too.
Do that,
so I hope to give out a lot of information. I'm going to try to put out some online courses to help people as well later this year, and introducing some workshops to help people. But I think I don't really have anything else to share other than one thing I wish I would have done earlier is if what you know about money or real estate or what people have taught you, I would tell people you should just question if you truly understand why you're doing what you're doing. And if you question it, maybe it'll make you curious enough to read or ask a few people about doing something a little bit different.
Good. Well, again, thank you for joining us today. Folks, we've only been able to scratch the surface of what Logan knows. I mean, he goes very deep. Obviously, we've touched on him scaling and all that he can do. But please find him, follow him, reach out to him if you have questions. But again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.